Check podcasts.
The Bread and Butter Collective is a collection of hospitality professionals working together to help strengthen our industry to build strong culture, community, and sustainability.
I'm Calen McNeil.
And I'm Sam Jones. And this is the Bread and Butter Podcast.
Welcome to the Bread and Butter Podcast. Hi, Sam. How are you?
Calen, I'm doing pretty good today, thanks. And yourself?
Doing good.
Yeah.
Just had an in-depth religious discussion.
I know, right? That was good. I'm going down a rabbit hole.
I love the rabbit holes.
Yeah, it was an interesting one about Jesus and all the other gods who have the same basic structure to their lives and their stories. And it's like
that's so fascinating.
They're all
well, now you've sent me the link, so now I'm going to go down the rabbit hole.
Those
darn rabbit holes. Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting too when you think about social media and the accessibility to information, and obviously a lot of it is BS, and you gotta. It's kind of like if you view it as I view it as an opportunity to try to get informed and challenge my views. So looking at multiple different sources for information and then verifying it and, trying to figure out what the traditional data is. But the object of it all is to keep people confused.
I know.
So that they can be, corralled.
I don't even like looking at the news for that reason.
Yeah.
So I've gone, there's a couple websites that I follow for news. One's ProPublica. Have you ever used that?
Yeah.
It seems like it's a pretty thought out.
The one that I really liked for a long time, well, my wife actually, when she was like watching Al Jazeera.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh, interesting. I never thought of that as it was. But then I started kind of watching Al Jazeera. And there's pretty unvarnished stuff. Like it was very unbiased. It was just basically interviews, and they were asking actually hard questions to who they're interviewing and not accepting the answers. And I think that's part of the trust test for me is a journalist. And that's what I liked about the BBC too. Like watch his interview with this longtime BBC guy, and he was a conservative. I can't remember his name, but he was a broadcaster for, 30 or 40 years.
Piers Morgan.
No. This guy was like an old school guy. Like Piers Morgan is like candy when it comes to intellect. And plus, he did some shady stuff.
I actually don't know anything
about
Piers
so
Morgan.
I mean, he was involved in spying on the royal family. Really? And
I don't have a problem with that. That's cool.
No. But when you're doing it in a nefarious way, like they basically were hacked into their voicemails. And they could hack into their phones, and then was publishing stuff that nobody knew, and they couldn't figure out why. But it came out that and he was the editor, I believe, of the whatever, garbage magazine or whatever that was producing this stuff. Okay. But it just, getting to the point of, verification and just journalism in general. Like, so this longtime conservative host, and he's an interviewer, had Ben Shapiro on, who's like a kind of a far right leaning guy, American guy. And basically they got into a big debate because he was challenged. So they share some similar views, but he didn't care what his views were. He was challenging his position. So state your view, ask him a question. Oh yeah, well, why do you think like that? What, well, that's, like he pushed him. Right. And then they didn't like it. He didn't like it. And then he called him, you're a liberal, you're a this, you're that. And he just started laughing, this guy. He's like, my audience will laugh at this because I've been a conservative, my whole entire life. But I'm a journalist first here in this interview.
Maybe Ben Shapiro's not accustomed to talking.
No, because they just feed these softball stuff, and it's like without challenging. Like somebody gets to sit up there and state as a fact, but if you don't test that theory or that what he says is a fact, and you're like, well, I know that's not true because I know this. So, well, what about this report that says this something different? And he didn't like that. Right. He didn't like his facts or what he thought was his story was being challenged.
Well, I think guys like that, because there's a whole slew of like debaters, online
Yeah.
debaters, basically.
Well, they could take
But
a
they're
good
not
debater.
really debating though.
No.
They're just they got their
Reinforcing
talking
their
points.
beliefs. Yeah.
They got their talking points, and they don't want to deviate from that.
Well, that's a good. I think debating is actually a really good example of where people should go.
Yeah.
Like if you're debating, like in debate clubs and competitions, you're picking a side that you don't necessarily believe yourself personally,
Right.
but you're challenging and you're going to have to defend that position.
It makes you understand that position and the other position as well.
Yeah.
Way better.
And often you're going to be asking questions that you don't necessarily agree with, but it supports your position and it challenges. So you're going to be challenging your own thoughts and your own position. Say there's one side and you believe in that side personally, but you're forced to argue the other side in the debate. So you're actually going to have to really think long and hard about your questions and how you're going to challenge your own thoughts and feelings, which I think is how you get to the truth, but you also get to a more defendable position. You know what I mean? Like you'll be able to, okay, yeah, I get that, or I never thought about that, or whatever. But if you're just given a platform just to speak, it's propaganda. Like it's not, and that's where, this shift from actual news and like a news anchor or a person doing the news shouldn't be inserting their views or their position or their opinions. Right. They should be actually challenging who they're interviewing to defend what they're saying. And it should be this back and forth, sort of debate or challenge. And obviously there'll be interviews where, somebody's doing really wonderful things and all that kind of stuff. And it doesn't necessarily need to be combative, but if somebody's up there saying this is the sky is gray or black, but it's really blue, and you're going, oh, I guess maybe it is black. You're not challenging them. Like, what's the purpose of it? Like it kind of goes away from the journalistic integrity. I think that's where, rather than talking about, corporate media or this kind of stuff, and just talk about journalism and the truth. And I found it interesting because the premier of Manitoba was being asked about these fires that were happening in northern Manitoba, and the reporter basically implied that people were talking about it being a result of this mine that was up there.
Okay.
And that the mine caused the fire, but there was no evidence of it yet. Like they hadn't done the investigation. They hadn't done this stuff. They're just the reporters asking questions based on rumor and innuendo. And the premier of Manitoba used to be a reporter.
Is that Premier Mo?
No, that's Saskatchewan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. His name is escaping me right now, which is
fair enough.
Yeah. Watanabe, I believe. He's Indigenous.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And in his prior career, he was a reporter. So I think he worked for the CBC. And he basically challenged this person and said, look, like journalistic integrity is important here. Like, I understand that there's rumors about whatever, but why are you asking me about rumors? You should be verifying and double verifying the facts. And let's talk about the facts, because otherwise you're going to be basically spreading rumors and gossip, and that's not journalism. And I thought that was a great point. And I think Mark Carney has done that as well, has like stopped and said, hey, like, don't talk to me about your opinion or the opinions of someone else or rumors or whatever. Verify your sources, verify the information. Let's talk about that. Otherwise, you're doing a disservice to the people up in that community that are literally, some of them are being asked to evacuate, leave their homes and all that stuff. And I think that needs to be more at the forefront, is just saying, hey, there's a code of ethics in journalism. It's what you're taught in journalistic school. Why don't we lean into that rather than gaslighting people like corporate media or whatever, all this stuff? It's just have journalistic integrity. Simple. Because then you take all that opinion out. If you're going to have opinion, but if news becomes opinion, and that's what's happened, right? News is opinion.
It certainly is. And you can change channels if you don't like the opinion to get another.
Yeah, or to get opinions that reinforce what your worldview is. And I think the human nature is to be curious. And I think everybody should be curious and, ask questions. And then you go out and try to independently verify some of the information, like from multi sources and, multi points of view. And then that'll shape kind of what your thought is on it. But if you just having information from one source,
it's not necessarily news. 'Cause
No.
it's not necessarily true, which makes it entertainment.
Yeah,
And
and that's where news becomes entertainment.
Yeah.
And I actually, this friend of mine, she actually, I never thought about it this way, but she said where everything went off the rails is, I guess there was a strike, like a writer strike in early 2000s,
Okay.
in the States, where, so all these shows, all these TV shows, all these they lost all their writers. Right. So they basically went to reality television. That's when Survivor came out and all that stuff. So then they realized how cheap they could produce that information. And that was the beginning of the end of actual, everything became opinion pieces, and you have all the talking heads saying what they thought. Like, I don't want to hear about what someone's thought is about news and information. I'd rather have it verifiable facts,
That
right?
feels
That somebody's
right that it
investigated,
goes.
right? But there's no money in that anymore. So the money goes to the opinions, and then they can pay these talking heads way less than they can pay an investigative reporter that may take a year to investigate an issue, right? But if you lose that investigation, then where's the checks and balances? How do you know what's true, what's not true? And you're just left to flounder, which is kind of a sign of the times, right? Which is unfortunate.
It makes a lot of sense that you can point back to the start of
and I was
TV.
like, oh,
It's
interesting. And then you
makes a
look
lot
at
of
that, and
sense.
then and then all of a sudden, then you've got the social media component, and then you've got all these influencers, and they're doing their own investigations, but they're not doing it in a way, or they don't have the resources either to really find out. They're just kind of opining.
What, TikTok's not a resource?
Yeah, exactly. Or like, I found this article, this guy, this doctor, this other guy, and then you have all these kind of quacks that we're off into the hinterland with their views.
Yeah.
Now are being mainstreamed, and like, but science and math and all those hard factual stuff doesn't change. You can have opinions of it, but your opinion doesn't change the actual fact that the sun rises and the sun sets, and the sun heats up the water, which creates the condensation, which creates rain, like all this kind of stuff that is kind of factual. And then you say, well, no, maybe people are seeding the clouds to cause rain or cause tornado. Maybe it's like,
Maybe there's giant Jewish space lasers.
yeah. Well, and it kind of goes back to original topic. We're going to talk about something else on the show today. But when you talked about, all the gods and, how the theory throughout, 5,000 years of these gods that were worshipped kind of was based on the same thing, the born on the 25th to a virgin mother to a, this kind of thing, which I never even considered that. So it's just kind of repeating the same story to a different audience, right? And basing it on science because it's to do with how the stars are aligned, and the 12
apostles,
12
or the
apostles
12
and the
constellations or whatever.
houses. The houses, or then you get into the horoscopes, and all of this kind of stuff is, can be interpreted a different way.
Sure can.
Yeah, which is. Yeah, and it's been going out throughout history, right?
Yeah, I do like to look at things in a different light that's not necessarily my own, because you just learn so much more.
Well,
when
it
you do
expands
that.
your thought, and causes you to pause and have questions. And I think anybody who is going to, just to close their mind to different possibilities, I'd rather just kind of keep. All like as many options open, right? And I never like being backed into a corner with one, this is how I believe, or this is what I think, or this is, and there's certain, the only things that are binary like that to me is science and math. And even that math doesn't really change. Science changes with new information,
absolutely,
right? Which I think is part of it. And my opinion change. Yeah, it develops. And my opinion should change with new information. Not just be like, oh, this is what my father taught me, and this is what I, because I think it just shortens your, or shrinks your world, and that's one thing when you travel, you just see all these different cultures and different ways of doing things, and you're like, oh, wow, this is what, and you see that they're happy, and you're like, oh, maybe, like you go to some of these very poor communities, and the thing that strikes me the most is how happy. They're not happy. Like, I don't want to offend anybody, but regardless of how much wealth they have, they still find joy and
That's a nice way to put it.
connection with their family, and their priorities are very pure. And and then I think what we have here in stress, and I'm like, wow, who would want that? And debt, and just chasing this thing that is like, I don't know, what the hell are we chasing?
Our tails.
Our tails. Now,
tails.
Sam.
Speaking of tails.
So you're in the coffee business.
I am in the coffee business.
You've been in the coffee business. When did you start on your coffee journey?
Well, my dad would always make really good coffee, and he would always take me out to go buy coffee. He would never buy it at a grocery store. He always had a place to go to buy coffee. And
like, would it be like a specialty?
It would be a specialty place
spot?
For sure. Yeah.
Would it be? Was there roasters back then?
Yeah. There were not
like kind of small,
not like we have here. He would take me to a place on Main Street and Broadway area
in
Vancouver. And I remember just like towers of coffee on the walls, and it was very Italian, modern Italian feeling back in the early 80s.
Yeah.
And just walking in there and having that smell hit you of like hundreds and hundreds of pounds of coffee in the air. It was amazing. It really
now, would they talk about where it was sourced? Like where?
No, not at all. They wouldn't. It was just like, it was basically, what color of coffee do you want? Right?
Yeah.
Do you want oily and black?
Yeah.
Or do you want brown?
Yeah.
Or somewhere in between? And that's kind of how people have been buying coffee for a long time, just by basically going by color.
Yeah.
And I don't subscribe to that. I don't like talking about color of coffee. I like to talk about the development of the coffee, which then leads to the final outcome of the color. But
so those would be like the attributes of the coffee that you like, perhaps, but not the purpose of why you're drinking it or why you're choosing that coffee. Like, how do you choose? Well, there's so many layers to it. Mm-hmm. So when you started, your first introduction was just looking at the beans and just like the smelling.
And that was as a child. I mean, professionally, I was a cook and a bartender for a lot of years. And everywhere I went, I kind of tried to improve the quality of the coffee. And I really took an interest in the coffee part of things, because it was really easy to make it better back then. Like, really easy. I wasn't doing magic. I was just making it better by grinding it differently, or
pressing it,
like
using the conventional kind of tools.
Exactly, because we didn't have any new tools at the time. Like, there was no scales or any way to determine the sugar content of your coffee or the parts per million in your brew.
Now, I think about the evolution of coffee. Like, based on your knowledge, where did coffee start? Like, without going into we don't need to get into the super deep stuff, but was it Ethiopia? Was it where was it?
It certainly was Ethiopia.
It was?
Yeah. And Ethiopia still has some of my favorite coffees. It's the only country, they say, and there's a little bit of debate about this right now, actually, because they're kind of finding in Kenya there was some coffee that may have been growing on its own, but if that's true, it would be deep in the heart of the jungles, and it wouldn't be commercially viable at all. Yeah. But for all intents and purposes, coffee starts in Ethiopia and it spreads around the world.
Wow.
Through trade.
So does it grow naturally in Ethiopia?
It does. It's the only country that coffee grows naturally and that we know about.
Wow.
So
why is that?
It's just where it began, I guess. I mean, all plants, I think, have an origin where they start, right? And then if people find them helpful or useful, they'll travel with them and spread from country to country. The birds will help take seeds across borders
interesting.
as well, right? Yeah. So, but I think every country or every plant has an origin, and then it just spreads from there.
Yeah.
So Ethiopia is not the only country that grows coffee. Coffee can grow anywhere in the tropics.
Yeah.
And
So
good
the right
coffee-
climate, the right
yeah,
temperature.
Yeah. Well, good quality coffee likes to be grown high up,
Yeah.
high elevations. That's where you get the best coffee.
Is that because of like thin oxygen or the temperature?
It's the temperature fluctuation between the day and the night.
Oh,
Right.
It's that gap.
It's that gap.
Yeah.
And it makes for better coffee. It makes for a heartier coffee too. A lot more kind of dense coffee will grow in higher altitudes. And when I mean that the coffee when I mean the coffee is dense, talking about the qualities that are in the coffee, the oils, the molecules, the flavor molecules, and everything are more kind of compact in a smaller package.
Now, does that? I mean, these may be dumb questions, but does that varies by region? Like, would there be like growing conditions in Colombia, for example? So, imagine the plants or the seeds or were transported to Colombia. Like somebody would have brought them there.
Absolutely.
Right. So then they would have said, hey, this is a good environment based on my knowledge of how they grow, or they just threw it in the ground, or they just started cultivating it, I guess.
I think that when coffee was first starting to go around the world, it was through the Dutch traders, and they were going to all the places that could grow all their pepper and all the things that they were looking for also grew in climates that coffee grows in.
Right.
So everywhere they went, they would try to grow things,
Yeah.
not just coffee, but they would try to spread their plantations
Yeah.
out around the world, see where these plants would grow best. And coffee took hold in almost everywhere that the Dutch went.
Interesting.
Yeah, all the tropical regions of the world have the ability to grow coffee, and it can grow at sea level as well, but it's not as good a coffee.
Like it's kind of thinner. Like what are the attributes?
There's a few different kinds of coffee, but two really that we talk about commercially is the Arabica coffee,
Yeah.
and that's the quality coffee, and that's grown in high altitudes. And there's a Robusta coffee.
Yeah,
and
interesting.
And that
I did some research earlier.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, it was going to be a test.
And Robusta coffee or Robusta coffee, the plants grow bigger. They produce more coffee. It's hardier, but it doesn't.
Like, what do you mean by hardier? Like
hardier,
like
more disease resistant.
Oh yeah.
Not so susceptible.
Yeah,
to
not so
blight and stuff. So they're a hardier plant. Whereas
so it could be rougher conditions and they'd survive.
It can be rougher. You can have the breeze coming in off the sea, and they're still going to grow.
Yeah.
They can tolerate more drought, etc. And they do produce more beans, but the quality isn't as good in terms of our tastes.
Yeah.
It has way higher caffeine content also.
Interesting.
So Robusta coffee usually has at least 20% more caffeine.
So, okay, that begs the question for me, like, is caffeine naturally occurring? Is it always only in coffee beans?
No, you can get caffeine in all kinds of things.
Is there a caffeine?
Cola
is there a
nuts
plant?
have caffeine in there. Chocolate or the cacao plant has caffeine in it. There's tea plants have caffeine in them. So caffeine can be found in a variety of different plants around the world. Coffee certainly has caffeine in it, and it's a real bitter flavor caffeine. So all coffee is going to be a bit bitter because it has caffeine in it.
So the decaf component. So how do you get decaf coffee?
There's a couple of different ways. There's hydrochloride.
Because they take
method.
it out. Do they take the caffeine out of the beans?
Yeah, caffeine
is it in the roasting process?
A soluble chemical, so it means it can be pulled out of the beans with water. That's why it's a soluble chemical. So when you're decaffeinating beans, you take the green beans before
Roasted.
anything's done to them, and you basically parboil them. And so all the caffeine plus a lot of other chemicals, lots of flavor, comes out, gets leached out of the bean, and then they drain all the water away. They evaporate it until you're only left with basically powdered caffeine at the end of the process.
Oh, interesting.
And the beans then have hardly any caffeine in them left. It's all being extracted out through parboiling.
So does it get all the caffeine out? Like a decaf coffee? There's still a little bit
of
like
0.03% caffeine in a good decaf. There's other ways to decaffeinate coffee too. There's a chemical method, and the chemical hydra. Don't ask me what it is right now.
Yeah, we make them up. That's okay. You can make it up.
But it's a chemical that's found really all over the place. So it's not a bad chemical, but it has a bad reputation because people want their coffee to be treated with water. They want
natural.
Swiss water. Sounds so much better than chemically extracted decaf coffee. But the chemically extracted decaf coffee is going to taste a bit better because you're not altering the flavors of the coffee.
Oh, you're not sucking out all that other stuff.
Yeah, you're just attacking the caffeine.
Is there a region that produces a coffee that it would be better decaf than other? Like once you do the treatment, or is it basically the same?
You can do the treatment with any coffee. But interestingly, I was down in Nicaragua and we're going through some small coffee farms, and a couple of the farmers were doing some experimentation with a coffee plant that I've never seen before. It had really long green leaves, like they didn't look like an ordinary coffee plant. There was just something about them that was different. As we passed by, I was looking at them and we were all like, what is this? And there was like they were saying it was like didn't have any caffeine in this coffee, naturally decaffeinated. And through talking more about it with them, we realized it's not uncaffeinated, but it's about 20% caffeine compared to a normal coffee. So it was really low caffeine naturally, and it was delicious.
Interesting.
It was so good. I can't buy it anymore because it's so expensive. But it was really neat. So there is a difference in caffeine content from plant to plant and from variety to variety.
Now you spoke to you can't get it anymore because of it's expensive. So let's talk about the climate. Like, is climate change and the warming climate helping coffee production, hurting it, or is it just trade? Is it like tariffs? Is it like what is causing the because I've heard the coffee beans price is escalating.
There's lots of different factors that play into the price of coffee. Coffee is a commodity, so it's traded on the commodity exchange, and there's a lot of money. It's the second biggest traded consumable commodity in the world.
Like sugar would be the
next to
oil. Oh,
Oil's
interesting.
And then coffee.
Like even more than sugar.
Yeah.
Or flour. Yeah.
And so because it's so big, there's so much money involved in it. That one factor is just the sheer fact that people trade it in paper. So they're not actually buying beans. They're trading. It's all just paper tickets going back and forth. And then people hedge against the price of coffee. And so there's a whole sector of the economy that bets against commodity prices, driving them up. Really. And so and this has happened in the last year really strongly, is people have been betting or hedging against the price of coffee, just driving it up. That combined with several other factors are keeping the prices high. Now there is a climate part of that, but that's been going on. It's very hard to say if it's getting worse or slightly more frequent. but take Brazil, for instance. They produce more coffee than any other country in the world. So the coffee economy is really tied to what's going on in Brazil. So
supply and demand kind of
it
factors.
is.
Yeah.
And when things are good, Brazil can hold back supply,
Yeah.
driving up prices.
It's kind of like OPEC, oil control.
It's very much like that. And when they get a frost and it hurts their crop and they don't have the same volume, that also drives the cost. So right now, this last year, moving into this year, there has been some drought and some early frost in Brazil, and that's definitely increasing the price of coffee. It's not the only part of it, though. A major factor is they're having a hard time getting the cherries off the bush because not no one, there is a smaller amount of people who are prepared to work that hard for that little money.
Yeah.
Everyone's got a phone now.
Yeah.
You go in the middle of the jungle to a plantation and you know these guys are tapped into what's going on in the world now.
Yeah.
They're checking the weather. They're checking the commodity price. They're looking in real time at what's going on. But that's not all they're looking at. Their kids are looking at social media, seeing the rest of the world not having to work as hard as they are for way more. Yeah. And so it's really tough to get people to go pick coffee now. So they're, like I say, there's coffee.
So they got the constraints in labor.
Yeah.
And so, going back. And so that's a supply and demand.
It's another supply and demand.
Wow.
And then transportation and the ability to get containers is becoming a real problem as well. Yeah. And that's been going on for quite a few years.
Yeah, for sure.
But it influences coffee just like it influences package or containers coming from anywhere.
Yeah,
in the world,
consumer goods, basically.
Yeah, it's like these ports need containers, empty containers, and they're having a hard time finding them. Yeah. Or finding the amount that they need. Yeah. And it costs more when they do find them. So that's also influencing the price. So there's transportation, labor, climate, politics. Politics is a new one. Well, it's not new, but it's really coming into effect right now with the tariffs. Yeah. I mean, Trump is arbitrarily tariffing Brazil 50%. Yeah. And that's a political tariff. Yes. It's not because of a trade
it's about
imbalance.
Oil, really. Yeah.
Sure. But he's saying it's because they're treating the old president of Brazil poorly. And that's why they're getting hit with the 50% tariff. Well, now all of a sudden your coffee costs twice as much. Yeah. Everyone uses Brazil in a blend. Yeah. It's the best blending coffee around because it's neutral, kind of flavored. It's medium bodied. It blends so well, and it's usually reasonably priced. Yeah. That's not the case anymore.
They'd basically take reasonably priced Brazilian beans and mix it with something maybe like a Kenyan thing that adds a little flavor and whatever that might be more expensive, but when you blend it, then it makes it at a price point.
It brings the price down so that consumers.
But now your base blend mix or blend bean is now doubled in cost. Mm-hmm. So where do you buy your beans? So you're roasting. I assume you've bought beans from a lot of different places over the years.
I bought beans from lots of different brokers. I've bought beans directly. I bought beans through auctions. There's lots of ways you can buy coffee. Yeah. Right now, I'm buying through a broker. It's for me right now, that is the easiest, most transparent way. Since COVID, I haven't really traveled anywhere, which is, I'm just not. Yeah. And so the best way for me to buy coffee right now is through a broker that I've worked with off and on for probably 15, 20 years.
Now, does your bean source change depending on what's happening? Like, how do you... I just think about
in terms of what beans I'm going to buy from what country. Yeah, that changes all the time.
Yeah, and then what you're selling your customer, because I would imagine like the roasting process. I know I drink your coffee. I love it. And you'll have, this is from this place, and this is from that place, and this is from this place. But do you have is there a bean that you've used consistently over the years? Because you've been doing this a long time.
There's not. There's a blend and a flavor profile that I like to hit. And I sway with that flavor profile target,
Yeah.
about 5% either way.
Yeah.
And I've been doing that for years, and I do it that way because coffee is an agricultural product. So even if you're buying from a small farm and you got 10 bags of beans,
Yeah.
they're not all going to be the same.
Right.
There's going to be slight differences. And then when they're out, you have to buy from somewhere else, and those
Yeah.
beans are going to be different. So as a coffee roaster, I really love to blend coffee.
Yeah.
I love trying to hit that target. And I've gotten really good at doing that. In fact, I kind of lean heavily on my blends because I just know that this coffee, and this coffee is going to taste like this in my head when I'm
Right.
done with it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you go through and you test all that.
Yeah.
And you realize you're either really wrong or you're spot on, right? And, sometimes I'm wrong. Like, I just made a switch from my house blend coffee, which has been consistently for a long time now, Sumatra, Colombia, and Brazil.
Yeah.
And I had to get rid of my Colombian. I wasn't able to get a Colombian that I liked anymore to fit that bill at the price I needed to get it for. So I went with an Ethiopian coffee, and for some reason, Ethiopian coffees are a little cheaper right now, which is nice and unusual because they're usually more expensive. But right now, it's a good window of opportunity to stock up on your Ethiopians. And so that took me back to when I first started roasting, because I always use Ethiopians in my blend.
Oh,
and
interesting.
so I'm like, okay, so I'm
to the beginning,
back to the basics, right? But I still need to hit that flavor profile. And so when I first started, I'm like, well, I'll start with the same proportions of coffee I did using Colombian. Just I'll swap it out with Ethiopian, and it didn't taste right at all. But I dropped.
Like, did it taste different than your blend?
It tasted different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could have sold it. Yeah,
absolutely.
But it's a different taste profile.
Yeah, I couldn't call. Well, I could call it whatever I want. I could still call it my house blend or whatever.
Yeah, but it would be pretty. Was it stark difference between what you were?
I could really tell a difference. There was a body difference and a sweetness difference that I wasn't liking.
And bitterness,
there was more acid.
Acidity.
There was more acid flavors in the beans. So I dropped the amount of Ethiopian by half, and the results were amazing. And
was it
super good?
Was it different?
Different, way different, just by dropping the proportion.
Well, was it different than, say, if you had the Colombian, like your standard blend and mix with beans from the? Were you able to replicate that same taste profile?
Yeah.
And that was the key. But doing it with
a different
Ethiopian bean versus
exactly, and sometimes the Sumatran changes, but I'll always go with an Indonesian coffee to replace that, because Indonesian coffees have a real taste profile to them. They're pretty kind of funky flavored, and it's their processing method. Once they pick the beans, they have to process the beans, right? So every country has their way of processing and drying those beans, cleaning them or not cleaning them, fermenting them or not fermenting them. In Indonesia is pretty haphazard in their processing. So you're going to see like tarps on the side of the road with piles of beans on them, and they're pretty funky, but they add a real depth of sweetness and body to the coffees that I always want. Right. So Indonesian coffees have that round kind of sweetness to them that I really like. They can taste like tobacco and tar and all kinds of things if you're not careful. But you don't just buy anything. You got to know what you're doing.
Now, the process, is there a noticeable difference? Say, for example, when you switched out the Somalian or the Colombian from the Somalian, like, is there a different process in the roasting component of it? Like, do you have to change your temperature, or like talk about the roasting process a little bit on the different beans and the varieties of stuff that you have to put together? Like,
well, all beans are going to be a little different. They're going to be slightly.
Because you buy them
different
green,
densities.
right?
Yeah, I'm buying them green and dry. And they range. We call it green, but they're really kind of from beige to translucent blue almost. They range in color depending on where they're from and how they're processed. every coffee is going to be slightly different in their density and what makes them up. They're going to be different how big they are or small they are. So all of that will influence how you roast the coffee. When you're roasting coffee, you're following a recipe, basically, right? Time and temperature.
Yeah.
So yes, if you're going to put all those individual coffees through the roaster individually, you would have to approach those coffees very differently, like adding heat or energy to the beans at certain points of the roast to get them through a hurdle or a point of interest in the roast where you're developing sweetness or where you're trying to develop the body in the coffee. So you approach the coffee differently in the roaster, but that's the difference between pre-blend and post-blend approach. I'm a pre-blender, so I mix my coffees together and then roast them all together. And there's going to be people who
because I guess you could roast each bean
separately,
and then
blend them after, which a lot of people say is a better way to do it because you get the true taste of those coffees. But
it's a true mix, I guess.
There's a true mix. I really prefer pre-blending my coffee because I get a more homogenized taste at the end.
Yeah.
And I'm not tasting all the different things. I'm creating a
taste. Yeah.
I'm not leaning on the individual flavors of those. I'm leaning on what happens when you put them together.
Now, is there a industry-wide preference? Like, is there a group that does it your way and another group that does it the other way? Like, is it
like camps? Like different camps?
Yeah. Like,
yeah, kind of there is.
Is there a right and a left leaning?
Yeah. There kind of is.
Yeah.
It's not political or anything.
Yeah,
it's not that right or left.
No, but it's
but there certainly
creative.
is. People will only pre-blend or only post-blend.
Yeah. And they just do it that way.
That's how they do it.
Yeah,
I'm open to both because it works for different people for different reasons. Yeah. Then there's a whole dark roast and not so dark roast approach. There's a real, I don't know if you've experienced coffee that's really high acid.
Yeah. I mean, I don't drink dark coffee because I don't like it. But I guess
what part of the dark coffee
I guess maybe I find it more acidic. I don't know. Okay. But I could be completely wrong. Like I guess I don't really know why I don't drink dark coffee. I just prefer medium roast.
Well, let me tell you why, or give you a clue as to why you might like that better. As a coffee is being cooked off, you're basically caramelizing the sugars that are in coffee. Coffee has sugars, acid, and caffeine in them.
Yeah.
And those are all very strong flavors. The acid, you can say, is over on this side.
Yeah.
Sweetness is in the middle. Yeah. And the caffeine or the bitterness, which can be caused by a couple different things, that bitterness, is on this side. So as you're caramelizing the sugars, you can kind of imagine cooking some caramel on the stove.
Yeah.
A little bit of water, a little bit of sugar. Mix up. It's clear at first, and then it slowly takes on color as you're caramelizing the sugars in there.
Cooking it, basically.
Yeah, you're cooking it. Same thing with coffee. You're cooking the sugars in the coffee, and if you don't develop your coffee, or if you don't caramelize the sugars enough and you stop the cooking process before you've caramelized the sugars, well, it still has all the acid.
Yeah.
It still has all the bitter. Yeah. So what you're doing is you're taking away the sweetness, the perceived sweetness, and you're left with really high acid tasting coffee. Well, those acids are always going to be in the coffee. You can cook them out kind of, but really you're still going to taste them. And if you take that coffee beyond the caramelization point, so you've taken your coffee, the sugars are caramelized, and then you take them further, what you're going to end up with is burnt tastes,
Right.
Like because
Yeah.
you've now burnt your sugars as opposed to leaving them as a caramelized sugar. And you know when you're making your caramel on the stove,
Yeah.
and you go too far, and it turns kind of black,
Yeah.
and it has a real burnt
Yeah,
acid,
you
you
can't.
actually smell
Yeah.
and taste.
Yeah.
You can't get rid of that.
Yeah.
Right. So then you're not going to taste the sweetness anymore in the coffee.
Yeah.
You might taste some of the acids, but really you're tasting bitter, burnt sugars.
Yeah.
So my approach is always go for when your coffee and the sugars in there are caramelized.
Yeah.
And that way you get this perceived sweetness that balances the natural acids and the natural bitterness in the coffee. And so if you're going by color, I aim for a medium roast. Because
So the meat would be less bitter?
Less bitter,
Because the
less
cooking,
acid.
so when you're dark roast, you're literally cooking the beans longer.
You're just cooking them longer with more energy.
Yeah. So it leans it on the spectrum from the,
From acid to bitter?
to the bitter. You're basically bringing it to the bitter side.
You're getting closer to the bitter side for sure. But like,
is that a rule of thumb or is it
no?
Can you make dark roast taste less bitter? Like,
my Hudson blend is being called dark by everyone who sees it.
Yeah. And do you call it dark? Is that your dark roast?
I really try not to call it dark because dark roast has a connotation of being bitter, of being oily.
Yeah.
And that's not what I want for my coffee. It's I call it a well-developed coffee.
Yeah.
When I'm talking about development, I'm talking about developing the sweetness in the coffee and the sugars in there. So my Hudson roast may look darker brown than a medium roast maybe, but it's not gonna have any of the bitterness. It's smooth and full-bodied and sweet. And that's because I aim for that sweet caramelization point, and the quality of beans I use is really good, and they're not too high acid. The real trend these days is not to develop your coffee very far. And what happens when you don't develop your coffee to the caramelization point is that you don't get that sweetness, but you still have all those acids. And some of those acids are really delicious.
Yeah.
Like you can get grapefruit acids, like acids that taste like grapefruit, or strawberries or tomato acids. Those are all really nice.
But is that based on the bean? Like how does that?
It is based on the bean
where it's
and the soil.
And,
yeah, for sure. So a Kenyan coffee.
Yeah.
Which is well known to being a fantastic origin. Their processing methods are dynamite. They really know what they're doing in Kenya when it comes to growing coffee. Their coffee is really high acid.
Yeah.
So that's what I would expect buying a Kenyan coffee. So if I'm bringing in like a single origin coffee and I want a really beautiful acidy coffee, bright notes, I'm going to lean for a Kenyan coffee. And then from there, you can change that acid profile through the roast and the development. So what might start off as a grapefruit acid taste, you can maybe develop that into more of an orangey taste. That's a little rounder, a little sweeter, not quite, but not so hard on the mouth. Yeah, and doesn't curdle milk when you add it to your coffee.
So are you doing this by trial and error? Like when you're roasting, like say you're starting a new blend, or what is the process when you're like, okay, I'm going to come up with a new blend. Here's the beans I'm going to use. Here's the profiles that I think are from here based on my knowledge of the region. And then now, are you going to do a roast and then try it?
Yeah. We do try to taste as much of the coffee that I roast as possible.
Well, I guess you're doing it in every sample too, like every batch. Are you tasting it after to make sure you didn't screw it up?
No, because I have a very small roaster and I make 10 pounds at a time. So if I were to do every batch, I'd be drinking 15 cups of coffee a day.
I guess that's the other.
And I'm not 20 anymore, so I can't do that.
You'd be up 24 hours a day.
I would, but my methodology is I'll come up with what I want in my head.
Yeah.
And I'll think about what beans are in my mind, what beans are gonna make that work. Then
Yeah.
I'll go and I'll hunt for beans that will work, and I'll ask my broker or a supplier
Yeah.
for a sample of those coffees.
I guess they would have a profile on those beans as
They
well,
they
right?
do.
Yeah.
They all have profiles,
Yeah.
but you know what? They're tasting notes and profiles are subjective,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So,
they're not. Yeah.
you get a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
Experience will really be your best friend
Yeah.
at that rate, because I know what these coffees are going to taste like, or sorry,
You have an idea.
I have a really good idea
Yeah.
what I can do with those
Yeah.
coffees.
Yeah.
And so my blending method is almost always in my head with confirmation at the end
Yeah.
by tasting.
Yeah.
Most coffee roasters will have like a smaller coffee roaster that they call a sample roaster that can hold maybe 20 to 60 grams of green beans, and it will give you a really good roast on a very small scale.
Yeah.
And then you can taste those through a testing method we call cupping,
Yeah.
where you just take coffee, grind it really coarse, put it in a little bowl. You add like 12 grams of coffee, a certain amount of water, and let it sit. And then you break the crust down, and you smell the wet aroma of it. And then you're judging and grading those
Yeah.
coffees on a standardized testing method.
Yeah.
And cupping is one of those amazing things to do. Everyone has an idea about what it's like to taste wine.
Yeah.
You swirl it around the cup, you look at the legs, you
Yeah.
smell it,
Yeah.
you breathe it in. Same thing with coffee.
Yeah.
You don't look for
Legs. Yeah.
You look for your dry aroma, your wet smell,
Yeah.
your taste profile on there. And as the cup cools, you keep tasting it to know where it's going. And
Yeah.
cupping is a great way to find flaws in your coffee before you actually purchase.
Yeah.
So people will cup coffees multiple times if they're buying, say, a container of coffee. First, you're interested in coffee, you get a sample, you taste it.
Yeah.
It gets to the port, you can ask for a sample. When it gets to the port, the exit port of the country, you can ask for another one, because you don't know what happened from
The climate change, the heat, where it's
farm
stored.
to the
Yeah.
port. Anything could have
Yeah.
happened. And then from there, once
arrives.
the ship comes into the importing port, you can taste it there too,
Yeah.
to see what happened on the boat, because sometimes they're on the boat for a couple months
Yeah.
or quite a few weeks, and maybe the container had a new paint job on the
Yeah.
container, and that's permeated into the coffee, and you
Yeah.
can smell
Exactly.
the paint, right?
Yeah.
So the cool thing to do back in the day was go to coffee roasters and go watch them cup coffee.
Yeah.
So all like baristas years ago were looking for further work in the industry, and
Yeah.
from a barista, it's natural to go become a roaster.
Yeah.
So all these baristas would go hang out with roasters who were cupping, and the coffee roasters somehow didn't tell them that this is not a production cupping. This
Yeah.
is like an actual, just real cupping to determine whether or not you're going to accept these beans or not.
Yeah.
And so to be able to taste all the taints in coffee, you roast it very light. You don't do
Yeah.
a lot of development.
Yeah.
So all these baristas, like, because cupping's really cool. You're slurping and being serious and taking notes, and you're being blown away by some of these coffees. And they all have these really unique flavors when they're underdeveloped. All those acids that have so many different cool flavors really stand out. Like you're tasting those stewed tomatoes. And it's really obvious because they're underdeveloped. You haven't built out the sweetness to balance those.
So you're not manipulating it in
Right.
a way based on your technique or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. It's natural.
Yeah. So all these baristas are now developing a taste for underdeveloped coffees.
Yeah.
And so it is now my opinion that has led to a real trend of underdeveloped coffees in the world, because all these baristas grew up to be roasters, and now
Right.
they're all roasting to their taste that they learned when they were baristas.
Yeah.
But those aren't production roast coffees, and they never were meant to be. But it's such a cool experience to go cup with people who are professionals that is really impactful. So these baristas would develop this new.
Do you think that's
new
a
appreciation.
positive for the
Sure.
coffee industry? Like as far as, or
yes and no. I mean,
Yeah.
it's always positive.
creates
when people,
more interest and more diversity?
Absolutely. There isn't anything wrong with experimenting with your flavors
Yeah.
in anything. And there's room for it all. It's subjective though, right? It's not to my taste. And so I don't make my coffee like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the
But
power that you've got because you decide.
I'm the owner of my company.
Yeah.
It seems to be working
Yeah.
out. I mean, like it's crowd pleasing coffee.
Yeah,
It's what I aim for.
Yeah.
I'm not after the
You're not catering
1%.
to exactly the 1 or 2% that are the real, snobby or snooty. Not even snobby. It's just like specialized.
It's specialized,
Yeah.
very niche
Yeah,
market.
it's like same in the restaurant industry.
Yeah, and there's absolutely beautiful coffees that are traditionally underdeveloped, like absolutely beautiful, but they've got their place. For me, that's like a treat in the afternoon, maybe. Yeah. But I'm not starting my day with that. I want something more. I want to say robust, but I shouldn't. Yeah. More. I don't know. Warming.
Yeah. More. Yeah. Just It's.
Because when I say more robust,
it's like when
it
you
sounds
eat,
like more robust.
You're not starting with like your, like a 10-course tasting menu, when you eat breakfast.
Yes.
Right? You're kind of wanting, this is what I like every day. I want some comfort. This is my warm blanket. I'm going to start my day. It's consistent.
Yeah.
I know the taste. I'm not surprising myself with any flavor. So when you bring it to the home now. So obviously, I've gone from buying ground coffee and buying beans and grinding it myself. What is what are the differences and what are your recommendations when it comes to it? I know mostly like finding ground coffee in the store is harder than finding the whole bean coffee when you're actually at the grocery store.
Yeah, for sure. And most grocery stores will have like a bag grinder built into their cabinet or whatever, right?
Right. Yeah. So you could take it and grind it.
And you can grind it. Yeah. And that's all about keeping your coffee fresh. Coffee has coffee oil in it, and oil and oxygen don't mix. When you mix oil and oxygen, it goes bad almost instantly.
Yeah. So it changes
it. It makes it taste kind of rancid, like bad oil will, right? So you've got about a 2-minute window of keeping those oils intact when you grind your coffee. Yeah. Which is great if you have a grinder at home. Yeah. Always recommend to have a grinder at home. If you don't, I mean, it's pretty cheap to buy a little propeller blade grinder, which is not a very good grinder, but it will do a better job than not doing that. Yeah. Coffee has about a 2-week window of time frame to be ultimately fresh, I think. Yeah. As soon as you bag up that coffee, it starts to release carbon dioxide and takes in oxygen to replace the carbon dioxide. It begins to breathe. Yeah. As a green bean, coffee transpires, where it takes in carbon dioxide and gives off oxygen, like a plant will. Yeah. But when you cook it, it does the opposite. It gives off the carbon dioxide, takes in oxygen, and by taking in that oxygen, it's spoiling the beans because it's mixing with the oils. It's changing. So you've got a 2-week window of optimum freshness. Most coffee, if you're buying it fresh, will be totally delicious for 4 weeks, 6 weeks. It'll still be delicious. You will notice,
like in the bean form,
in the bean form,
and then you grind
it fresh. Yeah. If you think you want fresher coffee, but you want to buy it in bulk, just divide up the bag you buy into freezer bags or jars, put them in your freezer once.
So you can freeze coffee?
Absolutely, obviously, you can freeze coffee. That's a controversial thing, though. Yeah. For years, people have said, no, never freeze coffee. The idea is you don't want to refreeze coffee.
Right, so take frozen coffee, use it, and then put it back
in the freezer. So once you put your coffee in the freezer, that's great. Take it out, let it sit on the counter for 20 minutes to get back to room temperature, and then start to brew with it.
So now, are you freezing the beans, or are you grinding the coffee and freezing it?
Freezing the whole beans.
Freezing the whole beans, then grind it. So you want to grind your beans fresh.
Fresh per cup.
So my wife for a long time. Like I was never a big coffee drinker up until I guess I've been probably drinking coffee now 20 years.
Okay.
Right? I'm 54. So there's a
there's
34 years I didn't drink coffee at all. And so I meet my wife. She likes coffee. But she would buy ground coffee. Right. So then we were buying ground coffee, and I'm thinking, well, because of our relationship and, being in the food industry and, I'm like, well, why don't we grind? Why don't you get a grinder? So she buys a grinder. Now we grind. So we grind the beans. We buy your beans at the store. We go to Peppers, local store, and
nice shop.
love your beans, love the taste of it, love the finished product. So we have like a little container that will then grind. And it lasts us maybe 2 or 3 days. So we'll grind it and then we'll scoop and then we keep it in there. So what are we doing ourselves a disservice? We are doing it. I know the answer to that question.
You're doing the coffee a disservice. You're doing yourself a convenience.
Yeah.
But that convenience definitely comes at the expense of your coffee.
So your recommendation would that we take the beans, we grind it fresh.
You need for if you're making a pot of coffee, or if you're making an espresso or a French press, just grind what you need for what you're using at the moment.
I think a lot of people that do that do.
Minutes.
Yeah. So now again, okay, so get into the nature of the actual grind part of it.
Yeah.
I found it if you grind it too much and it's too thin, too small, I guess. Leaving a little bit bigger pieces in there, coffee beans,
Well, it depends how you're brewing it. Every brew method, from an espresso or a Turkish coffee to a drip to a French press to an AeroPress, they all want a different grind.
Yeah.
The more finely ground your coffee is, the more surface area of that coffee you're leaving exposed, not only to the air, but for your extraction as well. So when you're brewing your coffee, so when you're brewing your coffee and it's a really fine grind, you're really extracting everything out of that coffee. And you might not want that because you might get too much bitterness in your cup. When it comes to an espresso, it's all about the timing of how long it takes to extract your coffee, and your grind plays a really important part of
the press
of that timing. But if you're tamping the same pressure every time, the only thing changing the extraction rate is your grind.
Yeah.
So the smaller the grind, the more back pressure to the espresso machine you get, the slower your coffee comes out, the more bitter it's going to be. The coarser the coffee, you don't get the same surface area.
Like a thinner?
Very thinner when it comes to an espresso.
Yeah.
For a press, I love my French presses. I just love them.
Yeah.
But most people grind their coffee way too fine for a French press. You want it almost uncomfortably coarse.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh no, that's wrong.
Is that even ground?
Just smash it with a rolling pin or something. But what that does is it gives you more body, and the sweetness really comes out, and the smoothness of the coffee really comes out with a really coarse ground coffee for a French press.
Interesting, fascinating. I wonder what we use is, it's one of those, I'm going to butcher it, but it's got the water container here. And it's got the little, where the coffee, you put the filter and you put the coffee and put the little cap on.
Okay.
And then you got a little button down here. And then you got your coffee urn there. And then you press, and then all of a sudden the water just goes, and it's pouring over the.
Oh, yeah. So it's an automatic pour over method. Basically, it does have a paper filter, like a cone paper filter.
Yeah, it's got the paper filter.
Okay.
And you put the beans in.
So that's a pretty medium grind.
Yeah.
It's kind of fine, but certainly not coarse.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to brew coffee. It's so traditional. It's really clean because you with the paper filter, what you're really doing is you're keeping out all the grit, obviously, out of the coffee, but you're also holding back a lot of the coffee oils as well. So any method that uses a paper or a cloth filter is not going to be as heavy bodied flavor. And that's only because you're holding back those coffee oils, which I actually really like in my coffee. I'm a big proponent of like a pour over kind of drip coffee through a paper filter. They're clean, they're bright usually. You can really
like, could you use that without a filter? Like, would people put the coffee right into the, like, probably not, because then you'd have all these.
Well, then you're basically making an immersion extraction, they call that, where you're just adding coffee to water and letting it sit.
So I guess a French press is kind of, yeah, okay.
And a French press is really the most classic and, in my opinion, the best way to taste.
Well, it's kind of the cleanest too, because you have all the purity of the method, but you're not creating a mess. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're pressing it down, and all the grind is at the end of it. You've got the coffee above it, and you've got the grind underneath it.
Right.
It's easy. You pour the coffee, and then you lift it up, and then you just dump the grind. No problem.
Yeah. What most people do wrong with the French press is they grind their coffee too fine. They'll end up with a lot of sediment at the bottom of their cup.
Yeah.
And there's ways to fix that, but that's a good sign that maybe your coffee isn't ground coarsely enough. If you're having a hard time plunging your French press down because of the resistance, it means your grind is too fine.
Yeah, and that would affect the taste, and like
it'll make it way more bitter.
Yeah,
for sure.
Fascinating. This is like, I think we've been doing this podcast for as long as we have, and the deep dive into the whole coffee and the variety. And so for you, like, if you're looking to the future, what do you see as, is there a trend? Is, you see there is a lot more independent roasters, I would venture to say.
I think so,
right?
Yeah.
You've got your Starbucks, right? Like I getting more knowledgeable about coffee.
Yeah.
I don't like it anymore. Like,
is it the flavor? Or is it the idea behind it?
Well, the idea is one part of it, right? So there's the principle component, but as far as the quality, like, if I'm just basing it on quality, one seems a little bit more generic. There's more nuance in the flavor of the coffees that I'm buying now.
Yeah.
And this is part of, my wife would always buy like Starbucks blended or like ground coffee, and that was what she would have at her house. So I would, because I wasn't drinking a ton of coffee, a little bit of coffee every day, but not like a ton. I would just be, okay, what do you got? Let's do it. And not really, and then I go and have coffee at Habit. I have coffee at your place, and we'd have coffee at Cafe Fantastico every once in a while. And for me, I was just drinking coffee. But now that I've got into it a little bit more, now I'm like, okay, yeah, I find this person's coffee is a little bit too bitter. I really like this blend that I'm getting now. And when I'm grinding it, I'm like, oh, it's perfect. And, then I'm having, if I have the odd Starbucks, because it's just, there's a Starbucks beside Big Wheel, and I'm just like, okay, let's just get a coffee. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of bitter, and it's kind of burnt and acidic. And I'm just like, oh, I don't like it. Right. And
they do that on purpose, because they're not buying the best beans, and they're buying a variety of beans. Like when we were talking about how I do my blending and how I come up with my flavor profiles, that's what Starbucks does on the massive scale. But what they're doing is they're kind of getting the coffees that they can get in for the price that they have to buy it for. Yeah. And they have to make it taste like Starbucks coffee.
Yeah.
So they just overdevelop it.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say they burn their coffee, but they take it really far into the development.
It's very close line between burnt, because I've had burnt coffee at Starbucks.
It's very fine line for sure. But they do that so it always tastes the same.
Yeah, so they're taking it to
like
an extreme level because they can be consistent that way.
Yeah.
If they're more nuanced, then you need more skill.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
And they have too many stores to be nuanced about anything.
So they're always on the burnt end of the spectrum.
They are, because that's an easy flavor to replicate over and over
Interesting.
again, right? but the future of coffee, I think we're coming into a time where coffee's, amongst other things, is going to become a bit more precious and a bit more expensive for people. And I think going to a cafe there will always be that.
Yeah.
But I think more people, and with the internet and social media and everyone has access to everything, people are getting really interested in brewing coffee at home
Yeah.
now. And people are getting really technical about it.
Yeah.
Like really technical, more technical than most cafes, some people, right?
Yeah.
Like they've got the best equipment, all the little tools, and people are getting right into that. And I think not on that kind of detailed level, I don't think, but I think more people are going to just consume their coffee at home and not go out for coffee.
Interesting.
That's my thought.
Yeah.
I just see more people with a bit, everything costs more, and you might not have as much money, so you're going to need to prioritize where you spend. And coffee has always been fairly resistant to economics, because it's always been something
It's
that
at that
people
price
can
point.
afford, and you can always treat yourself with a cup of coffee. Is what they say. But I don't know how much longer that you can just always treat yourself to coffee mentality is going to last. I think, as a cup of coffee approaches $5, it gives the consumer a little pause for thought, right?
Yeah.
And as I know, coffee is going to get more expensive than that. I think people are going to just really want maybe that quality of coffee at home that they can get at a cafe, but they're going to brew it at home for a fraction of the price.
Yeah. What's so interesting, because I think about I would just go, I'm going to go here, buy coffee, buy coffee. And then now I almost exclusively brew most of my coffee at home. Like I don't have a lot of coffee out because I've already had my coffee for the day before I leave.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll go to a meeting or I'll go for breakfast or something and I'll have a coffee there, but way less than, maybe I spent $100 a month or $200 a month buying coffee, which I don't think would be unreasonable if you're having a coffee a day, and at $5, $5 a day is $150 a month. Right. So
that's easy.
Even if you're buying like drip coffee, that's $3 or $2.50 or whatever.
And you get your muffin along with it, or whatever it is you get.
Yeah, because that's the other component of it. Now you're spending $300 or $400 a month on this whole morning sort of ritual.
I know,
right? Because it is habitual.
And smoking can wipe out your budget, right?
Yeah. It's interesting. Well, I guess that's sort of like just the general economics thing. I think for me, having these types of conversations and having your expertise and a growing number of unique sort of people that are roasting and doing that kind of stuff, and having this variety of taste profiles and grinds, that I think it just makes more interesting. Like I think it's broadening out, just like wine. When that movie came out, Sideways, I think it was called, where they really got into the wine stuff in the Napa Valley, and it was like early 2000s, and everybody's all about the wine.
Right.
So it just created this whole sort of demographic of knowledgeable people, or the cooking channel with cooking or any this stuff. So
I think you're absolutely right. There's real comparison that the more people get interested in coffee, the more they learn. Coffee is, you can learn so much more. Like I'm always learning more about coffee. So when you're a home coffee brewer and you don't have all that knowledge, there's so much to learn, and it comes in fast because of all the social medias. You got information about making the best coffee at home all over the place, and it gets people going, and gets people interested in all those small coffee roasters that are providing all these new flavors and new coffees. It's amazing, and that does grow our home coffee industry, I think, as opposed to cooking, maybe, where you have to buy so many more tools and more ingredients to make what they're making on TV, too. Right? Like you can't just copy what you see on the Food Network. Yeah. But with coffee, you can do that.
Yeah. By just the source of the beans and then the process, which is a much simpler thing. But I think, would you rather sell a cup of I mean, this is kind of a dumb question, but as we wrap up, would you rather sell a cup of coffee in your store or a bag of beans at retail or wholesale?
Well, if I got to serve my customer the cup of coffee, if I got to make them that
Right.
coffee,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
would rather sell them the cup of
Yeah.
coffee.
So back in the day when that was your business, like you're not in the stores as much
No,
as yeah.
I
Yeah.
began as a barista because I like making you something.
Yeah.
I'll make this coffee especially for you.
Yeah.
And that's why I loved it. Now I'm a coffee roaster. I still love the interaction I get between my customers, but I would rather my business be focused on selling people bags of beans rather than a cup of coffee. But
the purity
if
of
I'm making it, I still want to I still want to make you a cup of coffee.
Yeah. It's that whole and that's the same thing in the restaurant industry too. Like that experience of bringing a plate of food to people that you're proud of, and you're watching the flavor and you're seeing the experience and their conversation, and then you're taking away from them. You see the joy in their face, and it's that moment, that immediate gratification of performing that ritual, I guess, because coffee is no different than dining and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of comfort there. I think that's the one thing, for our listeners is finding that sort of comfort and not ever losing sight of the importance of that ritual of whether it be a coffee or going to a dinner or a meal or having that, where do you meet people? Where do you converse? And every time we have our podcast, we have your coffee and we have a conversation, and what a beautiful vehicle to promote that conversation and that dialogue.
Coffee talk.
And now we've actually had a coffee talk
while doing coffee talk.
God. Oh, my mind blown.
Mind blown. And that really, we just scratched the surface. I mean, we didn't even get into the politics of coffee.
No.
And
I think
that is a massive topic that we won't get into today. But I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff going on in the coffee industry.
I just can't even, and I guess,
there's a lot of good things going on in the coffee industry.
Sure.
And people are trying to make it better as we speak. But still, politics are not good anywhere they find themselves.
No. Well, and again, it's a lot. It really comes down to, where the product is being made and how it's being brought to the consumer and who the consumer is. And then there's the levels of corruption and then servitude, because you're dealing with, we talked, I think we might've been off air, talked about, the people that are picking the beans, and who's picking beans. And, I don't know whether we talked, was that the beginning of the show?
I think we've talked about it a couple of times, but
we'll say we'll do the politics of coffee. That we'll add that to our
compare.
Future.
We'll do a 50-50. We'll do a politics of burgers.
And
the politics of coffee. Because there's going to be some politics with the beef industry. For sure.
100%. And I mean, I think it's
And it's about how you kind of navigate that as your business that really ties your purchasing to your core values.
Yeah, right? And again, that is the essence of being true to what you're doing. Like, in our industry, in our business, it really is about passion, because it's not about getting rich or getting the money or whatever. Like, you got to fight tooth and nail to get your little nugget out of it to support yourself. But it's really about the passion, and that's where you get the joy from. And I think aligning your integrity with your mission is exactly how you do it, because you can go to bed at night feeling good about what you're doing, and it enriches your experience. And
hopefully it enriches people around you.
You spread it, you share it, and getting the knowledge. And Sam, this has been great. I've got amazing depth of knowledge that I didn't have before. And thank you for explaining coffee.
Well,
at this level, like
if we didn't have time limits on the studio, we could just talk forever.
We would. Well, we always do. It doesn't matter what we're talking about or if we have guests or not guests. We always get our conversation going.
Well, I'm glad that we had to talk about coffee. I'm glad that I could share a bit.
We're lucky to have you. Honestly, like, you're a master roaster.
No master roaster.
You're
no master anything.
You're not a master.
I'm not a master of anything. I'm good at my job, and I can teach other people to be a roaster, but I would never call myself a master roaster. And those who do call themselves master roasters need to look in the mirror and check their head.
Oh, I love it.
You know why? Because there's always more to learn.
I love that. I love it.
Yeah,
You got some certifications, though. Right?
I do have some certifications. Yeah, I can call myself all kinds of things. I just wouldn't call myself that.
That is awesome. Well, on that note, I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, the non-master roaster, Sam.
Thank you. I accept that for sure. The always learning coffee roaster.
Oh, I love you, Sam.
Love you too, Calen.
Thanks,
I
brother.
hope you have a great rest of your day.
Be real kind.
You be really nice.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bread and Butter Collective's membership includes the following local businesses: 2% Jazz, Bunny's Kitchen, Buzz Coffee House, Eagle-Ite, Big Wheel Burger, Blue Mountain Solutions, Bodega Tapas Wine Bar, Eva Schnitzel House, Farmsgate Foods and Catering, Victoria Chocolate and Company, Drum Roaster Coffee, Habit Coffee, Foo Asian Street Food, the Culinary Arts Program at Camosun, Cafe Fantastico, Fall Epi, Harold Street Brewworks, Hey Happy, House of Botang, Nikkei Ramen Ya, Jenny Marie's Cracker Company, La Pasta, La Rue Patisserie, Mocha House, Part and Parcel, Poco a Pinto Bar, Pizzeria Prima Strada, Keating Pizza, Roast, Table 9 Consulting, Sherwood Cafe and Bar, Sweets by Selena, The Collective Wine Bar and Kitchen, The Drake, Tapa Bar, The Nimble Bar Company, Ruth and Dean, The Whole Beast, The Wienery, Spoon's Diner, Truffles-Inspired Catering, and Zambries.
To hear more from the Bread and Butter Collective, go to checknews.ca/podcasts on Check Plus, or find us on your favorite podcasting platform.